identity, notions of nation, of the nation, as well as questions referring to post and neo-colonialism. The experimental intermediate literary aesthetics of post-colonial writers so far has really not been worked on enough. I think more work should be done. And I will talk about these two and the third writer, Teju Cole on your right, and No Violet Bulawayo's novels, for instance, attest to the many different ways in which writers today imaginatively engage in socio-political issues, which they translate into an aesthetics, an intermediate aesthetics, and really look for innovative new formal modes. While living now in the USA, these two writers, for instance, share roots in post-colonial sub-Saharan African countries and are familiar with experiences of diaspora and transcultural deterritorialized identity. Unsurprisingly, these novels tell stories of transnational identities and lives with multiple topographic settings and locations, thus attesting to the extensive migratory movements that characterize our age. Their self-reflexive ekphrastic quality reflects a broad aesthetic as well as socio-political and cultural critical interest in border crossings, in translation, and hybridity. All this is also true for my third speaker. I show you for my third writer I want to talk about tonight, namely Jamaica Kincaid, whom you might know. I have a picture later. So, as already mentioned, post-colonial and transcultural literary texts focus on certain critical functions, cultural critical functions, which help tackling questions of the canon, of cultural memory, of trauma, and also social imaginaries, how we think about our communities, how we think about, how we imagine our society. In the long academic debate over Ekphrasis, and you remember these quotes because I used them before, so in this long academic debate about Ekphrasis, Mitchell was the one who first discussed the saturation of ekphrastic strategies with questions of power relations and cultural hierarchies. He claimed already in 1992 that one function of ekphrasis as a social practice is that it translates between self and other, that it, quote, transfers into the realm of literary art, sublimated versions of our ambivalence about social others and maybe also others. Elizabeth Razor, too, explains that ekphrasis engages in otherness and in the foreign. Now, like other intermediate modes that are transcultural, ekphrases are traveling forms that characterize today's global circulation of media. So that's another aspect I want to stress, this global circulation of media. The interplay between words and images, the engagement with visual artifacts in literature, and an emergent open-ended aesthetics of in-betweenness is used productively to negotiate hybrid, pluralized, and in-between modes of being in our transculturally entangled modernity. The lecture's goal is to explore the multifaceted role of intermediate configurations, such as ekphrasis, in some of the post-colonial texts, and how they touch upon notions of hierarchy, superiority, and legitimacy in the field of cultural representations. Among the few attempts to bring intermediality studies together with postcolonial studies are these two scholars. Now it wants you to press the button. Yeah, it wants your touch. Okay, here you go. That's slide 4. Here, these two people, Emery and also Doering, they both worked on Caribbean post-colonial text. And Emery, for instance, she pleads for a kind of the centrality of vision and visuality in these modern literatures. People are nodding, they are modernist experts here. And, you know, they also underline, both of them underline that processes of exchange, that a transformation of how we see the world, an aesthetic transformation. That's what Emery says, that is what these texts do. So think about our practices of seeing and transforming them into, as Emery says, transfigurative counter visions that challenge our visual practices associated with European colonialism. So in particular, the strong, almost naturalized association of vision with knowing is something they question. Yeah, with Doering himself worked a bit more about ekphrasis, Emery not so much. Ekphrasis, you know, as we're interested in, but Doering agrees that kind of it's all about turning the colonial gaze. That's what these novels want to do. That's the thesis. But yeah, I think they are very convincingly demonstrate, you know, that intermedial devices like ekphrasis really can have a revisionary effort, that they can transform the colonial gaze. But maybe these texts do much more than only that. And they do more than the, I would say, the, you know, the Black Atlantic paradigm, yeah, that is just about slavery. These texts, as you will see, are also very, very much also about an African middle class, not just about slavery, but they want to depict, you know, Africa in all its faces. Okay, so I'm going to focus on the two writers that you already saw, but it's, you know, there is a lot out there. You see here, you know, poetry collection as, for instance, Grace Nichols. She is a British writer. Or, of course, you know, Derek Walcott, one of the really famous poets, post-colonial poets. And you see a few other titles like, you know, from India, Amitav Ghosh, or also Jazz Help Me with Photograph, that comes with Photograph. From Canada, Michael Ondaatje and Alexander Hemon. Then 2 titles from Kincaid. You see Rushdie also from India. But they are all, I suppose, cosmopolitans with a very nice credit card, I suppose. All of these people here, that makes, of course, a difference. All right. So in these texts, we as readers encounter cover images of a specific kind. We discover reproductions of paintings and photographs that are inserted into the text. We find ekphrastic descriptions of works of art, as well as documentary photographs. We find pictorial descriptions of landscapes that are evocative of certain paintings. And we also find typographical experiments sometimes, so iconic forms. By means of verbal visual configurations, literary works enter a very dense Oh, sorry, I forgot this, but I won't read it out loud because I had that in the first lecture. It's an example, maybe you remember it, an example from Bulawayo, whom we are turning to shortly. And this is an Ekphrasis of batik things, Martin seen back in Africa. But we discussed that already, but just that you see, what she does here is exciting because she extends the ekphrastic canon. That's what we said last time, because she's describing cloths and pictures that, in batik, and they don't belong. Yeah, it's the Renaissance painting or other things that are in the Western canon. All right, sorry for that. So where was I? Yeah, I wanted to mention again that these novels kind of think about the larger context of our media world, the effects of the media, and also, how media make a connection between the very global and the local. Yeah, and how they kind of bridge and travel across geographical and cultural contexts. Good, then I cut 2 pages and I go on to my first example. All right, so this is one of the Grand Dames of Caribbean American or American Caribbean literature. I will today mainly talk about Lucy, an earlier novel, but I just can highly recommend See Now Then, which is a recent work of hers, and which has a very interesting time concept. So I just can invite you to read, and also Lucy. Lucy is a wonderful novel. Now, what Kincaid always talks about, it's really the main topics. It's race, intersectionality, questions of representation, and she uses intermedial strategy to kind of negotiate hegemonic visual regimes. So the politics of how media represent Black bodies and especially Black women. And she's from Antigua, was born in 1949. She left the Caribbean island to become an au pair in New York when she was 17. What else is important? She writes about gazes, and really there's so many references to the visual in all of her work, and all her protagonists are always immigrants from the fringes of the world, or fringes of the colonial world, we should say, and they have to come to terms with a sense of subjectivity in their new lives in the American centers. And that means that you also think about and redefine visual practices. So very often these female protagonists describe pictures and visual artifacts, and in so doing, they carve out new spaces for their own female subject constitution and also self-expression. And as you will see in a moment, Ekphrasis helped the protagonist in the novel Lucy to think through these visual regimes and work through these very, often precarious and troubled histories of dislocation and intersectional racial marginalization. All right, so in Lucy, we encounter photography and we encounter painting. These are the 2 media she comments on. And the protagonist is a young girl. She escaped from an island, is an au pair now in a US metropolis. We don't know which one. And, well, she's trying to survive there, and becomes a very enthusiastic museum goer and looks at paintings in the museums. And here I have my first quote. So in a museum, she says, All right. Some paintings by a man, a Frenchman, who had gone halfway across the world to live and had painted pictures of people he found living there. Immediately, I identified with the yearnings of this man. I understood finding the place you are born in an unbearable prison and wanting something completely different from what you are familiar with, knowing it presents a haven. I wondered about the details of his despair, for I felt it would comfort me to know. Of course, his life could be found in the pages of a book. I had just begun to notice that the lives of men always are. I was not a man. I was a young woman from the fringes of the world, and when I left home, I had wrapped around my shoulders the mantle of a servant, so au pair. Okay, so as you might gather, the painter here is Paul Gauguin, who painted women of what used to be the South Sea as exotic objects, displaying their bodies to the male Western gaze, and thus satisfying. They don't hear us.
Somebody joining us.
Okay. Okay. So presenting these paintings back home in France, in Paris, I suppose, kind of satisfying a certain voyeuristic visual pleasure of the metropolitan spectatorship. Although Gauguin doesn't cut up female bodies like maybe Picasso in his later, or in his phase, in the Cubist phase, still, I mean, these are black female bodies. These are people of color whose naked bodies are presented. And yeah, and this is a colonial gaze. I'm sure you agree. And yeah, while she comes to the conclusion really early, Lucy, that, you know, her outsider status is not as nice as the one Gauguin had. She's an unprotected young woman in the diaspora. So in her first year in New York, she meets a boyfriend, a guy called Paul. Oh, yeah, well, surprisingly, Paul. He becomes her lover, and she's confronted with photographs he takes of her that disfigure and transform her and others her. And she's getting these feelings of constant alienation. So via Ekphrasis, she kind of critically reads them and kind of discusses the politics of representation. Look at this Ekphrasis. So we hear from Lucy that there's a photograph he had taken of me standing over a boiling pot of food. In the picture, I was naked from the waist up. A piece of cloth wrapped around me covered me from the waist down. That was the moment he got the idea he possessed me in a certain way. And that was the moment I grew tired of him. He kissed me now in that possessive way, lingering over my mouth, pressing my whole body into his. He loved things that came from far away and had a mysterious history. So Paul's photograph of Lucy appears to imitate one of Gauguin's paintings of his 13-year-old Tahitian mistresses, positioning Lucy not as the artist, but as his exoticized model. And this primatized image of herself, this man taking possession of her, this is, of course, a colonial trope, and she tries to get over it with the use of this Ekphrasis, but we won't have time to do that today, she also becomes a photographer. She buys a camera and becomes a photographer, which gives her some agency because she's no longer just the object, but also the subject. So she's intervening in the visual regime, if you like. All right, so that was an example from Lucy. And we move on to this novel, No Violet Bulawayo, who shares quite a few features, intermediate features, aesthetics, with Kincaid, in order to discuss politics related to Africa, the role of Western mass media, as for instance, American television and its representation of Africa. And it's also very much about African transnational mobility and very complex African diaspora identities in the USA, which include really also some lower and middle class experiences, that go beyond the Black Atlantic paradigm of slavery. Was born in Zimbabwe, received her university education at Cornell University before she went on to become a Stegner Fellow at Stanford University, where she teaches fiction and creative writing. So this is her first novel, published in 2013 by Vintage. Has won prestigious prizes, was shortlisted for the Man Booker Prize and the Guardian First Book Award. It's a coming-of-age story narrated by the capturing voice of its 10-year-old female protagonist called Darling. The novel has two parts, the first of which deals with Darling's childhood in a slum located in an unnamed African country resembling Zimbabwe. Bulawayo's representation of African life focuses on everyday political and sexual violence, poverty, illnesses such as AIDS, etc. However, Bulawayo intersperses her reports on the children's dire living conditions with laughter. That is, she allows some comic relief. The second half of the novel is set in Detroit, in Michigan, which she calls, in one word, Destroyed Michigan. As a teenager, of course, she struggles with assimilation, and it takes her hard work to adjust somehow to the American way of life, through food, through popular music, culture, standards of beauty, and later also she realizes American life, American identity. She never feels at home. She will never feel at home. So Bulawayo's novel deals with really essentializing and thoroughly negative representations of Africa and Africans in Western, for instance, US mass media coverages. And I brought along a quote, which is quite interesting because it shows how these children back in Africa are doing Africa for the mass media that come and film them. And so we have a scene where Western NGO people come and they expect to see a proper Africa. And here we go. It needs your special touch. I don't know what's wrong with my touch, but it doesn't like my touch. And then, okay. So imagine a bunch of 10 years old, right? Somewhere in Africa, maybe Zimbabwe. So NGOs are coming. We immediately stop playing and start singing and dancing and jumping. What we really want to do is take off and run to meet the lorry, but we know we cannot. Last time we did, the NGO people were not happy about it. Like we had committed a crime against humanity. So comic relief, as you can see. So when we just sing and wait for the lorry to approach us instead, the waiting is painful, and it's the gifts that we know are inside that make it so hard to wait and watch the lorry crawl. Finally, it arrives, churning dust like an angry monster. Now we are singing and screaming like we are proper men. We bare our teeth and thrust our arms upwards. We tear the ground with our feet. We squint in the dust and watch the doors of the lorry, waiting for the NGO people to come out, but we don't stop singing and dancing. We know that if we do it hard, they will be impressed. Maybe they will give us more. Give and give until we say, NGO, please do not kill us with your gifts. All right, so performing Africa is what the NGO people want to see and what they will document with their camera. Not being aware that the children are, and I quote from the novel, are embarrassed with their dirt and torn clothing. The children would actually prefer not to be photographed, but there you go. The star of the photo shooting is a very young pregnant girl called Chippo. The sight of her really makes the cameraman almost drop his camera. So this pregnant young girl before taking lots of picture of her. It's like she has become, and that's the words of Darling, of our protagonist, it's like she has become Paris Hilton. It's all just click, flash, flash, click. End of quote. The presents given to the children by the aid workers are, quote, toy guns, some sweets, and something to wear. I get a t-shirt with the word Google at the front, plus a red dress that is tight at the armpits, end of quote. Once the NGOs have left children, the children, quote, go and play war with the brand new guns from America, end of quote. Now, Susan Sontag once argued that the act of taking photographs is intimately tied to power and related acts of social possession and dispossession. Quote, to photograph, Sontag reminds us, is to appropriate the thing photographed. It means putting oneself into a certain relation to the world that feels like knowledge and therefore like power. Now the NGOs, it's a camera, right? It's probably, you know, moving images and maybe not a photograph, but I think the words, Sontag's words, anyway, apply quite well. So the central description of the NGO people, however, turn the power relations on their head, I would say. Darling's words are really interesting because kind of they try to rewrite or transform the usual kind of, you know, way of camera subject-object relations. Let's put it that way. And I have another quote by Niklas Mirzow. I don't know who is familiar with his work, The Right to Look, the counter history of visuality. We worked on, well, mainly also 18th century slave plantations. And he says the performative claim, so of a right to look where none exists, is also really a claim to a right to define reality. That is, to define who and what is visible in specific situations. The act of looking back and performing Africa refigures the dichotomy between the seer and seen as a reciprocal and dynamic relationship. Okay, so like the NGO people and their cameramen, Western broadcasting stations, think of BBC and also CNN, they are criticized in the novel by showing a certain image of Africa to the TV audiences in the West. More often than not, it's rather negative, or the negative things are reported. The good and successful stories are not so often shown. And so this topic of Africa's stereotypical representation in Western mass media that is very much the topic of the second part of the novel, where a darling then already has arrived in the US and lives with her aunt Fostelina in Detroit, Michigan. There are several scenes where Bulawayo really scathingly criticizes poverty porn, as it's called. And kind of here is a scene where she goes to a wedding and she meets an American lady in the restroom. And if you have the patience, I would like to read that with you. All right, so the American woman goes on saying, Africa is beautiful, but isn't it terrible what's happening in the Congo? Just awful. Now she is looking at me, so that's Lucy's, Darling's voice. Now she's looking at me with this wounded face. I don't know what to say, what to do or say. So I fake a long cough just to fill the silence. My brain is scattering and jumping fences now, trying to remember what exactly is happening in the Congo, because I think I'm confusing it with another place. But what I can see in the woman's eye is that it's serious and important, and I'm supposed to know it. So in the end, I say, yes, it is terrible what is happening in the Congo. Tell me about it. Jesus, the rapes and all those killings. How can such things ever be happening? She says. I can't tell if it's really a question, or if it's a question, I don't need to answer. But in the end, I hear myself saying, yes, I also really don't think. I mean, I can't even, that's the American voice, I can't even process it. And all those poor women and children, I was watching CNN last night, and there was this little girl who was just too cute, she says. It just broke my heart. Now, Liza, up there, my niece, one of the bridesmaids, the tall one, really skinny redhead, she's going to Rwanda to help. She is in the Peace Corps. You know, they are doing great things in Africa. Just great, she says. Okay, now what do we see here? We have Darling, a little bit older, who has never really traveled in Africa because she comes from a poor background. She has no clue. She never left her home country, probably not her hometown, just for traveling to the US. And it's kind of this idea that Africa is one big thing. You don't need to differentiate, no matter whether French colonizes, British, German colonizers, no matter. So it's just one thing. I brought along this quote, which I also like a lot. And when they asked us, so the group of migrants from Africa, where we were from, we exchanged glasses and smiled with the shyness of child brides. They said, Africa? We nodded, yes. What part of Africa? We smiled. Is it that part where vultures wait for famished children to die? We smiled. Where the life expectancy is 35 years? We smiled. Is it there where dissidents shove AK-47s between women's legs? We smiled. Where people run about naked? We smiled. That part where the old president rigged the election, it's also true for maybe another country, rigged the election and people were tortured and killed and a whole bunch of them in prison and all, there were they are dying of cholera. Oh my God, yes, we've seen your country. It's been on the news. Okay, you get the point. She's driving it home very, very clearly. So she's inviting us to really make us more conscious about, you know, how big this continent is, Africa, how many different languages Nigeria alone has, I don't know, 100 or even more. So yeah, and also be kind of more sensitive when it comes to media and what they do and how images travel and so on. And I didn't bring along more Ekphrasis because we had the one slide of the batik cloths, but there are more. There is, for instance, the 10-year-old watch porn in America, or 12 years old. So there is pornographic Ekphrasis, but I spare you that. All right, my last example is really a favorite writer of mine, whom you probably know. Teju Cole, maybe not. Teju Cole. Great example. This man, and we touched upon that, works with an intermediate aesthetic that uses black and white photographs and Ekphrasis that are quite often impossible, right? They, what we see on the picture is not what we read in the words that we get with the pictures. He's an American Nigerian writer. He's a photographer, art historian with a specialization in 17th century, early Netherlandish art, born in Michigan, then went back, but came back to the US to get his college education, and ever since then moved to New York and lived there. So he's a cosmopolite. All right, so this novel came first out in blogs and was on his homepage for a long time, Instagram. So he kind of experiments with all kind of formats. Now you see this beautiful black and white cover, which is also the last photograph in the collection. And on the right-hand side, when you Google Lagos, the capital, is Lagos the capital? Well, one of the big places in Nigeria, you find these pictures. So this is the water slums. It's huge, and maybe we discuss later what the black and white kind of as an aesthetic feature does. What you also find on the internet is this this big contrast between the water slums and the economic district where the rich live. So there you go. All right, so let me see, here I am. So Every Day is for the Thief tells the story of a young man who, after having lived for 15 years in New York, wants to go back. He visits Nigeria, the country of his childhood, and it's a very interesting piece of writing because it really crosses multiple generic borders. It challenges, the validity of Western literary categories as we know it. It's a fictional autobiography, it's a novella, it's a travelogue, it's a diary, it's a collection of essays, and probably you can add more generic features. Now, it came out in 2007 in Nigeria and was then republished in 2014 by Random House in the US and Faber and Faber in the UK. And the 2014 edition, this comprises these photographs shot by Teju Cole himself. So he's the artist of these. And what is the text? The text is a collage. It's a snippet of scenes that you see in the streets of Lagos. It's really a kaleidoscope of little scenes, if you want. And the pictures are somehow all of them not really kind of pictures we would expect in a travelogue. They really, you will see in a moment, they evoke reality, but they don't really kind of represent it. So it's playing with our expectations. Every Day is for the Thief is, by the way, a Yoruba proverb, and it goes on, but one day is for the owner. So that's a proverb. And let's look at some of the pictures that this protagonist, alias Teju Cole, shot when being a flaneur in the streets. and let's see what we think about his experiences. And yeah, I mean, with the photographs, it's clear that this is a book about vision. Yeah, it's a book about practices, visual practices. It's also, yeah, you'll see for yourself. So I showed you some of these black and white photographs in the first lecture, but we didn't go into them, you know, and yeah, let's look at them. I click through all of them and then we can return to them and look at them more closely. So just think about the motifs maybe for the moment and think about the black and white. So vignettes of Lagos life. So that's the last picture in the book. Look at this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one. We get back to this one and this one. So, I mean, what are these pictures, these photographs doing? These you find on the net, and this is what we get in Cole. So it's really strange glimpses. Why should they be important? I mean, why these scenes? Why this ridiculous, right? And then vision is always blurred, right? Very often, you know, it's either raining or, you know, something, the vision is blurred, or like fences, you know, there are boundaries represented here. It's kind of, you know, we as readers are really in the position of uncertainty. The texts don't help at all. I didn't bring the text along because they're just talking about something else. You know, and what we do as readers, we try so hard to make connections between the text and the photographs, but it simply doesn't work. They are not inviting us in. So kind of, you know, like in a travelogue, photographs are there to give they have this evidentiary nature, yeah, kind of, you know, giving evidence. But here, this is always called into question, really. Yeah, so ambiguity, hesitation, disorder, no voyeuristic appropriation, that's just not on, no easy consumption. There is a famous Caribbean philosopher called Glisson. He said it's the right of opacity. So Black artists have the right of opacity to kind of this inscrutability of the cultural other. They have this right. And maybe this is what Cole is doing here, kind of trying to, yeah, make us think because we don't see straight. Yeah, what else could I tell you? You know, there are also no captions, right? So nothing to help us. So who are these people? Where are these places? In what context have they been taken, these photographs? Et cetera, et cetera. I mean, if we try hard, we can try to bundle them. But let's go on to these. I touched upon this. This is an Ekphrasis. Yes, it is. And what we see in the text, he sees this protagonist sees a woman reading, craning his neck to see the book. I mean, we see it kind of not in focus. It's covered. He wants to see the name, what it says on the cover. And then he says it's Michael Ondaatje's. Well, we don't see that. And there are two women, and we don't know exactly whether this Adiri blouse that's mentioned in the text, so this batik blouse, whether that's real. So you see, even with the Ekphrasis, or this one I showed last time of lecture 1, a black goat grazes, the grass is so low and rare that the goat kneels on his front legs and eats in an angled position. And it's also something we do not see. So it's all about us not, and again, a barrier, right? So yeah, very playful approach to photo text combinations. When you look at this one, I mean, Cole is an art historian. He knows about photographic genres. This is neither a proper animal photograph nor a proper architectural one. And we can bet, I mean, he's such a clever man. He is playing with us and playing with that. All right, so if we want to bundle them, there are the blurred surface ones, there is the lack of focus ones, there's the ones with kind of we have just impaired view because there are things that obscure our vision. We can't look through. There is almost an iconoclastic impulse. Or maybe that's too strong, an anti-generic impulse, that does something, playing with the genre conventions and really playing with stereotypical patterns of perception. There is an interesting book out by Ali Bedad and Luke Gartlane, Photography's Orientalism. I can recommend. It's also, they went to the archives, the articles in this collection. People went to archives and discuss, photographic Orientalism, photographic exoticism from all kind of angles and countries. All right, so you remember this quote in his latest novel called Tremor, which is also blows all kind of generic ideas we might have. There we meet this Harvard professor of photography, person of color. And I highlighted in green, what this Harvard professor called Tunde, Nigerian-born Harvard professor, what he has to tell to his students. White people taught us that the world could be dominated by means of religion and warfare, collected for the sake of pleasure and scholarship, possessed through travel, and owned by anyone willing to claim and defend that ownership. How is one to live in a way that does not cannibalize the lives of others, that does not reduce them to mascots, objects of fascination, mere terms in the logic of a dominant culture? Travel photography, travel writing, they have become dead terms and he can't make them live. So he's asking his students, who taught you that your rights are more important than other people's rights? The excuses made for the display of African bodies are familiar to him. Those excuses are sometimes blunt and sometimes convincing and sometimes seductive. Everywhere in contemporary photography is the same old vampirism, but now it is smart enough to come with good wall text. So in the museums, clever wall text, recognizing maybe these colonizing gestures. So just as a nice summary, what I try to bring across. So, I've argued and tried to convince you that these writers, these 3 examples, that they kind of really energetically engage with the visual arts and with acts of seeing, but also with, the global media, with the power structures, with modes of identification, knowledge, and social recognition. So this question, who has the right to represent? Who is in the picture? And very much also the question, who is not in the picture, who is not represented? So all of this. And yeah, I think they do quite a good job. They try to find a visual language that kind of, deals with these visual regimes, with this question of colonialism, with the question of who is the object of seeing, who sees, who is the subject of seeing, and yeah, deal with otherness in many interesting ways, and yeah, claim maybe hitherto unrecognized experiences, enlarging the canon, bringing in local arts, African art forms, sometimes combining them with Western art forms. That's what this guy does, this Harvard professor. He brings together traditional Western art history with African art. Yeah, and this is what I wanted to say. Yeah, trying to make us maybe see our own blind spots. And that's an achievement. That's something literature can do and should do, make us think. So I thank you very much. Here is a bibliography of things I used. And we have, as always, time for questions. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. Because I think it's all in freezing. Sorry.
Yeah, we could also get rid of the slides maybe so that we people online. Yeah, of course. Of course. So we leave them for a moment, and the second last entry, Betjo Wasihun, Afropolitan writing, people like Teju Cole and No Violet Bulawayo, and also Taye Selassie, they are often referred to as Afropolitans because these are highly educated young writers who are, they are flying between the continents. They have nice credit cards, I suppose, to travel. So it's not this, Black Atlantic thing, but really, so Afropolitan, African, and cosmopolitan. So that's the term that was coined for them. And, it's maybe a bit difficult, like Bulawayo, she was also heavily criticized by other writers for, writing about this 12-year-old highly pregnant girl, because that's, again, doing what Western media are doing. But then again, Bulawayo said it exists, so I show it. Yeah. So it's a very, very encompassing view they want to present. And yeah. And are super good writers, very good reads they produce. All right.
Sharing them with us. Okay, I'll click off the PowerPoint so that you can interact with the people online if they want to.
There are questions.
Okay.
Well, here we go.
A couple of questions, comments, but I need to start. Shall I? Okay. Yeah, Gabriele was wondering, the rights, you mentioned Caribbean philosopher. Yes.
Glissant.
Right of Ekphrasis.
Glissant. I forgot to put him. Yeah, Glissant. Glissant, and he's very important for post-colonials, people working on Caribbean novels and poetry, and this kind of right to opacity.
Yeah, during my point, so you hinted at the end with your comment on the framework. now something with the wall texts.
Yeah, in the museum, the
the
wall
museum,
text, yeah.
But the question of decolonizing the museum, right?
Exactly, exactly. So the way I read it is that the museums are by now so clever that they, find words that suggest that they're not kind of exposing black bodies. So this clever way of, dealing with it, decolonizing, as you're saying, them, doing the job themselves. But as you see, the cynicism in this quote, it's not accepted by this Tunde, this protagonist in this novel. So that's interesting. I mean, yeah, John, I think there's no other hand. Was that your last question?
John wanted to pick up from me, right? No. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought. Okay. Right. No, and my other one, it's not so much a question, but a comment. When you were dealing with, that you called the first one, every day is for the theme. You distinguish between the idea of evoking reality and representing reality. And that's really one of the issues, right? With ekphrasis and well, the borders between ekphrasis and description and representation. So evocation versus representation. It's just a comment.
Yeah, but it's a very interesting comment because, I mean, I'm somebody who would love to replace the representation, this noun that Heffernan used, for many reasons. So my point is that ekphrasis evokes something. I now use the same word here, and this is a problem because what I want to say is, they conjure up something, or we are invited to imagine something, and it's just not the usual thing we would expect in a travelogue. Yeah. So, I mean, with all these blurry things, I mean, this photograph of the wedding, I mean, you see a few white dresses. It's supposed to be a wedding, but what do we make of it, right? So, so I think it's really a comment on ekphrasis. And in the seminar, I will show you more of Cole's work. And it's really about enlarging the canon, pointing to the fact that ekphrasis, of course, had also a dark past. It's used all the time to kind of support also regular official ways of seeing, right? And what they try to do, these writers, is to use it in a different manner to make us think, right? That is very interesting to see. Here, it's a denial to use it as always. So decolonizing ekphrasis, if you like. Yeah, Monica, I see Monica's hand.
I was very focused by the picture you showed us. Those vignettes, so themes of life and trying with the captions, and then you said no, we don't have captions at all. I wonder if this is something with the idea of the everyday, the fact that you're showing us something not exciting, nothing happening, very trivial, very uninteresting, and just showing the everyday. Not necessarily commenting on the video, but then is the picture just about showing? Is it not about commenting? Is it not having is it not a political tool or an effective tool more than just showing? So I'm wondering what to make of the random pictures.
Yeah. I mean, not showing, when we think of colonial pictures of Africa, what would we expect? Naked bodies, obviously, jewelry, dukes and duchesses. Well, if that's the right word, I'm colonizing it again. So, the everyday and the banal and you're absolutely right. this is also a political counter action, really. Yeah, the everyday, not the special. And just life as it is. Yeah. So, but they are so beautiful in a way, these pictures. I mean, these little boys in this water slum, very aesthetic. So the black and white also does something, of course. And yeah. So is that, I totally agree. Yeah. So that's one of the functions. I totally agree. Yeah. John, thanks for your patience.
Staying on photography question. Listening to you, looking at the photographs, obviously Western society has controlled the narrative of non-Western places as post-colonial shows through the camera. We had the cameras, they didn't, the images were shown in our media, etc. Things like the early photographs of the excavation of King Tut's tomb. It was the white man's camera that revealed to the world. Growing up with National Geographic when I was a kid, same thing, right? That was the exploitation of it. But building up literally what one is saying is with the smartphone everywhere now, and they have this. It's not as if it's a white man's privilege anymore. A smartphone there, and it democratized the narrative now, because even places to put them online is democratized. Yes, the majority of people on TikTok, well, whatever the idiots think is X, majority are Western, but they still have access to this. It's not blocked unless the nation blocks it, obviously. Does that not make the post-colonial gaze obsolete?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would still say not everyone has access to smartphones and power, electricity, but you're absolutely right. And I think the 2011 novel is so different from his latest Tremor 2023 because there he talks a lot about, all the portraits that are now on the internet. Yeah, so I mean, this is a novel that's more up to date in the sense, capturing the new universe we all live in. So these novels are 15 years old already, and we should go on working on the latest ones like Tremor, which I didn't bring along, but there are wonderful quotes, Ekphrasis of digital portraits that everybody, because it's more democratic now with the smartphones. Everyone can put pictures.
Do you want to go take your shower while I'm
internet, but what do the novels do? They talk about that. I think that's important work. Yeah, that they remind us and make us see the mechanisms. But you're absolutely right. This could be taken to 2026, and Cole's work is very interesting. So if you want to, think about the now, then Tremor is your novel. Read it. It's amazing.
And how significant is it that in the first example you talked about Lucy, you said that she decided to take pictures, she gets a camera and she takes pictures. So it's like she's talking back or seeing back the fear. So maybe this is important too.
Yeah.
Significant. Yeah, the fact that she takes pictures.
Exactly. That's what I cut out, but that's the point. Yeah, she becomes the photographer. She's in charge of taking pictures, and she's trying to develop strategies not to do certain portraits, and not to do the things Paul does, right? Yeah,
Paul Gauguin too.
Paul and Paul Gauguin, both Pauls, both Pauls. No, absolutely, absolutely. So more work for all of us, tremor, contemporary, yeah. But you know, still because John mentioned it, the photographs of the colonizers, National Geographic. I mean, also the anthropologists, you know, who used Ekphrasis all the time, or other forms of description to describe what they see in Africa, right? So description is also something anthropologists today object to. They don't like it because for them it's colonizing. So what they now do in anthropology, they always talk about their standpoint. I'm doing that as a white, middle-aged woman, Western. So this kind of navel gazing, this is my position. But yeah, it's interesting that these people who want to, you know, make us think about these colonizing gestures, that they go back to Ekphrasis, but debunk it in a way, but still use it in very productive ways, bringing in, yeah, I mean, porn film, Ekphrasis of batik, etc. So good work they are doing, I think.
To pick up on John's point, that it's not because you take a photograph that you can be sure, guarantee that the photograph will be shown. And you need to ask yourself the question of how will it be seen, by whom and where. And in one passage in particular, one extract, I think it's slide 16 or 17, you showed us a description of the scene between the protagonist, the 10-year-old girl, right? And a CNN or a person, an American, who was talking about images that she'd seen.
Yeah, yeah, in the restroom, yeah,
Could
yeah.
you go back to that slide?
Yes. I mean, on the internet, there's an endless row of pictures these days, right? And what the novels do is they're taking them out again, out of this flow, by hinting at them or describing images. Or it was 16 or 17, you said? Let's go back. In the restroom, I think it's the one in the
16.
Africa is beautiful, the one in the restroom, maybe?
It's the one where the child says, in response
To this lady. So either this one or it's the next one where she just nods and nods and nods.
that one. Oh,
Might be the next one.
that's where the narrator says, okay, here, yeah, this is.
Yeah.
Okay, so, really a technical question. In what way is this an Ekphrasis?
Well, it's not a detailed Ekphrasis. It's more a reference to the media, right? To media images. This is not a fully fledged Ekphrasis, but, you know, references to certain images are also, you know, often discussed within the big frame of kind of quasi-ekphrastic. No, this is, it's just referring to a bundle of images that we maybe all carry around with us because it's maybe also related to iconic images.
Is this repetition of the smile, that is to say,
Yeah.
it is irony rather than the image or the representation which carries the weight of the critique.
Yeah.
And this is an example in which it seems that language, or at least the use of irony, is more pertinent than
Absolutely. Yeah.
it's as if, in fact, you could take an analogy. It says that we smile is the verbal equivalent of the mundane photographs that Monica was pointing out.
Yeah.
We smile, meaning our reality, our everyday existence is that, not what you see.
Yeah, that's good explanation. So we smile would be the equivalent to these mundane. It's just a way of, again, a way of claiming the whole thing, yeah, not really engaging in the discussion, it's kind of a subversion, right? Again, yeah.
But more broadly, the question I'm asking myself is how efficient or central is Ekphrasis in doing the work that these novels apparently are doing, which is to reverse the gaze. In some cases, not a critique. So, in what way is Ekphrasis the privilege means by which this work is?
Oh, it's here in Bulawayo. It's one means. I think we have to broaden it. There are iconic scenes or central scenes in the text where Ekphrasis is super important and goes over pages, but this is also more general comment on the media world, right? And the circulation of images and how the local meets the global. So the local children already know, how the images travel globally. And I mean, Ekphrasis is I would say, one important feature, but it's not the only one. I mean, here, in Everyday is for the Thief, there are Ekphrasis, but there's so many other things that are important. Can do.
points, the seminar PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So I wanted to discuss with you in the seminar Open City, a novel that won, lots of prizes, Cole was praised for kind of doing something really new, and I and it's maybe goes a bit more into direction that John and also the others here kind of were hinting at, the digital revolution and what that brings to the table. And when we look at contemporary American literature, I think it's interesting to see that the digital technologies, the new technologies, how they come in. And I once worked on different cases. And when you look at contemporary literature and digitality, you can say either novels acknowledge it, but are indifferent. That would be Donna Tartt's The Goldfinch, because Donna Tartt's The Goldfinch is all about eroticizing the original painting again. She's not so interested in the digital. Then there are novels like Teju Cole's Open City, where I think that digitality and plays an important role when it comes to topic, to form and style. And then, of course, there's Ekphrasis born digital, like Shelley's Patchwork Girl, that is, hypertextually encoded, so a really electronic text. All right, so I have more slides here in Metz, we started already the discussion about, you know, in the digital age, in what shapes do ekphrasis come along? Ekphrasis are, you know, I mean, if there are images in a text and they are on top of that ekphrastically described, why is this necessary? Because everything is on the internet. Why would it be around Ekphrasis at all? We have all the pictures. You know, why would we as internet educated audience, why would we want that? And we said in Metz that the interesting thing, if Ekphrasis kind of is present, and the picture is there as well, so pictured ekphrasis, it gives maybe yet another perspective on the image, another perspective, an additional perspective. So a polysemantic or many perspectives. So an accumulation of perspectives on how we view how the visual works, etc. Now, we don't have to read these slides I brought along, but really what I would like to do with you is to look at a few quotes from Open City and discuss the protagonist's view on things. The protagonist is again a flaneur. He's a psychiatrist in his 3rd year of education in New York. And he's walking, like in the other text we discussed, but he's walking and he's meeting many people and he's seeing a lot of poverty in New York City, but he never really engages. So from an affective point of view, he's a bit on the low side, right? Not kind of getting too much involved. All right, so Open City has several settings, and we encounter these settings by the mobile gaze of this protagonist, who's really prone on kind of observation and description of what he sees. My first example is an architectural ekphrasis, what we call architectural ekphrasis in this novel. And why don't we look at this example? So he's walking the streets of New York, and suddenly across the street from El Malecon, that's a popular restaurant, was a massive and architecturally bizarre building. It was built in 1930 and was known back then as the Louvre's 175th Street Theater. Designed by Thomas W. Lamb, it was filled with glamorous detail, chandeliers, red carpeting, a profusion of architectural ornament within and without, and the terracotta elements on the facade drew from Egyptian, Moorish, Persian, and Art Deco styles. Lamb's stated aim was to cast a spell of the mysterious on the Occidental mind with the use of exotic ornaments, colors, and schemes. And it goes on. It's a super long ekphrasis. And then, you know, he's telling a bit about the history of this building. It had become a church, but the Gilded Age excess remained. The religious function had begun in 1969, and the theater, renamed the United Palace, still hosted several congregations. The best known and longest running of them was the one shepherded by the Right Reverend Frederick Cotter. Reverend Ike, as he was popularly known, preached prosperity and lived in the princely manner befitting, in his view, a faithful servant of God, and so on and so on. And it goes on, and it ends with the jumble of architectural styles failed more than 75 years on to revolve themselves into something meaningful. Even in its best days, it must have looked alien in the environment. It looked more so now, still reasonably well maintained, but utterly out of place. Its architecture, a world away from that of the small shops, its grand columns and arches irrelevant to the fatigued immigrants who rarely raised their heads to look above street level. The spell had faded. Okay, so a long description going also into the history of the building, and I want to show it to you. That's the building that you can see, and I wonder what strikes you when it comes to this architectural Ekphrasis. Is there anything that strikes you, John?
I don't know my layout, but I suspect 175 is Parliament.
Yeah.
So you're putting up, and it's in the 30s, right? Parliament was already a black enclave, Parliament Renaissance and all that. So putting up a style that's supposed to speak to the non-Occidental origin, it was very preaching to the choir at that point.
Exactly. Exactly. So that's important. Yeah, that's important. But you know what struck me, because I walked in Harlem, I walked the streets of Harlem, but I did not see this building, you know, when I was there last time. But so I read up about that on the internet, and what kind of struck me when Wikipedia, sorry for the typo, what struck me is that so many things that pop up in the novel are more or less also popping up, not identical words, but so, you know, popping up on Wikipedia, you know, a lot is there, yeah. The evangelist, the television evangelist, the location, also, you know, description of this architectural style, the Oriental meets the Occidental, which is quite funny. So, you know, I was asking myself, sorry, there's another typo. I did that before Christmas last year. So what is this all about? What does this mean for Ekphrasis in a novel? And I would say that this protagonist is really hyperlinked. He's digital native, if you like, yeah. But what does it mean for the novel? What does it mean for the long tradition of Ekphrasis? What is Ekphrasis? I mean, Ekphrasis is the signature piece. You know, long tradition of ekphrastic poems on the Mona Lisa. And now I, Gabriele Rippl, come along and I write another ekphrastic poem on the Mona Lisa, which I will never do. But, you know, it's a signature piece. You put yourself into a tradition. So what's that all about? It's kind of a debunking, right? Again, a way of playing with Ekphrasis that, you know, it's not about that Cole pinched something. I think he's doing actively something with Ekphrasis. And so this is like secondhand Ekphrasis. It's, you know, and it's also, and maybe you see that later, secondary side. It's not me in the museum seeing something, but it's already through the system, right? It's like secondary side or secondary experience, secondary Ekphrasis. The same here, he goes to, where are we? He goes to a museum, and there, hang on, which one was it? Oh, I wanted to also say there is Karen wrote a whole book about the digital migrant novel, and she has coal as one chapter in her book. So the digital migrant novel, that kind of, it's not the migrants crossing borders into Europe, but it's about this interconnected global environment of the new millennium. So that's really interesting, that also the migrant novel is now something different. So second degree Ekphrasis, what is this all about? Julius goes to all museums in New York, and he also goes to the American Folk Art Museum in New York, and, delivers Ekphrasis on Ekphrasis on Ekphrasis. And here is a slide from the Fenimore Art Museum, and this is the homepage of the museum. And we don't need to read the whole thing, but again, there is information, and there's more information that somehow rings a bell when we read the description of the John Brewster painting, a deaf painter, a 19th century deaf painter, who was quite important for the way American painters painted landscapes, etc., rural New England. So, I mean, when you look at the homepage, and I highlighted a few things here, you find again there is a use of certain adjectives that pop up again. And this is also the case when we come to the Ekphrasis of this painting by Brewster. And the protagonist is going on about the stillness of the painting and all of that, and describes this painting in great detail. Muted colors, serene and ethereal. These are, again, adjectives you find one-to-one on homepages. So this is just interesting, I think. Really interesting. And it's not that Cole is an art historian. He's absolutely able to describe pictures. Absolutely. He learned it. He learned how to do it. But these are all a bit prefabricated, second-hand, second-degree Ekphrasis. And I think it says something also about our age. Now, yeah, oh, here's the web page. Look at that again. Serene and ethereal. That was just, that was just in that one. Yeah, so, I mean, we could go on and on, but let's leave New York City. We go to Brussels now. Yes, oh, yes, of course. Yeah, yeah.
Fine art or lofty or noble literature, I don't know. Yeah, as you say, explain with Ekphrasis and recycling or upcycling bits of nothingness from Wikipedia. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think the gesture is really, and even in postmodernism with the digital, where people have lost the feeling that they're actually pinching things, right? Plagiarism, really unethical. But this is the gesture you just take.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that the writer, Cole, just took. I think you described the gesture really nicely. So that maybe adds to what I said. Yeah, adds to what I said. But I don't think that Cole is doing that. But Cole, even if he doesn't, it's not in your face, he doesn't make it explicit. But the gestures are all there. That's how it works, right? How that some of us do things, right, these days. And another example, which I find really convincing, is Brussels, this old European city, And the house is Bridges Cathedral, but yeah, it's been spared. Brussels was declared itself an open city when the Nazis were just standing outside of the city. And by declaring your city an open city, then the city wasn't destroyed. That's kind of what's behind it. So there was no firebombing of Brugge, of Ghent, or Brussels. Surrender, of course, played a role in this form of survival, as did negotiating with invading powers. Had Brussels rulers not opted to declare it an open city and thereby exempt it from bombardment during the Second World War, it might have been reduced to rubble. It might have been another Dresden. As it was, it had remained a vision of the medieval and Baroque periods, a vista interrupted only by the architectural monstrosities erected all over town by Leopold II, second in the late 19th century. So italics by me. And yeah, how is Brussels described? How is it described? What would you say? Political, right? In a political manner.
Historical and political.
Yeah, historical is the context that matters. And with Leopold, so it's a reference to the Nazis who are standing in front of, or threatening to bomb. And then also Leopold II. And Leopold II was, of course, the king that had a private colony, Belgium Congo, and squeezed it out. Now, the Ekphrasis, or, some of it is an Ekphrasis, architectural, then history comes in, and then back to description, a city of monuments and greatness was set in stone and metal all over Brussels, obdurate replies to uncomfortable questions. It was time in any case, so he's still in the museum. It was time in any case to go home, to go to the hotel, to leave Claudel with his wet bronze head, to leave in the museum next door, Orden's Bruegel with its fallen Icarus, the unforgettable painting by an anonymous painter of a young girl with a dead sparrow. All right. So what do we have here? Is that an Ekphrasis, Orden's Bruegel with its fallen Icarus? It's a very short reference, very short. And it brings in Orden. So if we want to call it an Ekphrasis, it's a reference to one of the most famous ekphrastic poems, Orden's poem on this ekphrastic poem on landscape with the fall of Icarus. And you see Icarus just in the corner here, a negligible detail, the guy dying, falling from the sky, too close to the sun or to things he should not have done. And so he's in this corner, I suppose, dying. And yeah, what do we make of this? I mean, you will remember that the second half of the poem reads as this. About suffering, they were never wrong, the old masters. How well they understood its human position, how it takes place while someone else is eating or opening a window or just walking dully along. How, when the aged are reverently, passionately waiting for the miraculous birth, there always must be children who did not especially want it to happen, skating on a pond at the edge of the wood. So this is also a reference to another Bruegel painting. They never forget that even the dreadful martyrdom must run its course anyhow in a corner, some untidy spot where the dogs go on with their doggy life and the torturous horse scratches its innocent behind on a tree. One of the most really iconic ekphrastic poems. And, you know, when we look at this, what is it? Is that a stenographic, short, super short, mini ekphrasis? But this, you know, images refer to other images. Words and ekphrastic poems refer to other ekphrastic poems. Again, the circulation. And we could also look for the other image that's mentioned here, the other painting. I'm sure we would find it. But this secondhand character, this stenographic character, all of this is really, really interesting. And yeah, and also the references to colonial history, right, with Leopold II and that kind of, you know, and this poem is also really interesting because it was written in a time when there was the first Reichskristallnacht in Germany. So, right, you know, when Auden heard about that. So it has many historical layers here, from Belgium, Congo to the Nazis to the Reichskristallnacht. You know, it kind of all, it's very dense. But ekphrastically really, really interesting. Then, you know, I can go on. I don't want to bore you, but of course, he also goes to the National Photography Museum in New York City, back in New York City. And he, that's the second part of the novel. So he returns from Brussels to New York City and again, walking in Harlem. He kind of sees certain images of African Americans, and that then brings him to the International Center of Photography, where he goes to see an exhibition by the Hungarian American photographer Martin Munkacsy, I think it's pronounced. And again, we have a long description of the pictures, the atmosphere in the gallery, the affects also in the gallery. And here is another excerpt if you like to hear more. The show was crowded and the prince unexpectedly lively. Lively is always a nice adjective when we discuss ekphrasis. So Munkacsy's journalism, that might interest John, Munkacsy's journalism was dynamic. He liked sports poses, youth, people in motion. In these snaps, which were so carefully composed but always seemed to have been taken on the go, I could see the alertness that he brought to his other masterful work, such as the photograph of the 3 African boys running the surf in Liberia. Now, Cole wouldn't show you, but I'm showing you. So that's the famous image by Munkacsy. And I mean, you know, the protagonist goes on and on and on talking about this very important Hungarian American photographer, you know, who did journalistic photography, but also did other things. So the ekphrasis, or whatever we want to call it, it was from him and from this picture in particular that Henri Cartier-Bresson had developed the ideal of the decisive moment. Photography seemed to me, as I stood there in the white gallery with its rows of pictures and its press of murmuring spectators, an uncanny art like no other. One moment in all history was captured, but the moments before and after disappeared into the onrush of time. Only that selected moment itself was privileged, saved for no other reason than its having been picked out by the camera's eye. So the camera and the photographer pick out moments. They decide. So, like what Cole did in Every Day is for the Thief, just, has the right to pick out moments. Now, when you look at this, I mean, I find it amazing how many references to Lessing's Laocoon there are, the pregnant moment, as we read in Lessing, the liveliness, and all of this. So, he goes on, Julius is going on through the gallery and is going on describing what he sees. And at the bottom here, he says, I suddenly understood that photography can fix eternity in a moment. It is the only photo that influenced me. Such intensity in this image, and so on. And then it's again being very, oh, look at that at the bottom. You can't really read it, but even today, it still bowls me over, talking about affects, right? What we touched upon thank you, once in a while. All right, and he goes on and on and on. And maybe just this one more picture. He's looking at a picture, a photograph of troops in parades at the opening of the Reichstag in 1933. There was the image at once expected and unexpected in the middle ground of a row of soldiers of the new German chancellor. Walking close behind him with his contorted nightmare of a face was Goebbels. And again, affect, strong affect. I needed to move away immediately, needed to rest my eye elsewhere and be absent from this silent encounter into which I had inadvertently barged. I couldn't bear to look any longer. Now, isn't that interesting? A young man who is effectively speaking when it comes to contemporary people he meets and people, he cannot kind of build kind of an affectionate relation at all, but he has no problem in art galleries. So this is the picture that with the nightmare of a face of Goebbels that he's referring to. All right, what else? What else do I want to tell you? I mean, I've been monopolizing these things, but I'm sure you, I hope I've been able to convince you of a few things that I wanted to bring across. I don't know whether we have energy enough to read this about photography. It's quotes that are very famous and that you know, of course. I'm sure you know, this question, how often or how long can photographs shock us into, I don't know, doing something, or can the shock wear off, all of these questions. But it's clear, I mean, our protagonist is really shocked and he's full of affect and he has to leave, can't stand staying in the gallery any longer. All right, I mean, that's it basically from my side. Secondhand circulation of images. And I hope you were able to follow me. Sorry for turning that into a lecture, but I just wanted to give you a few more excerpts because I think Cole is really one of the fantastic younger voices that we have. Maybe also a stimulus to think about where will Ekphrasis studies go? What do these young people do? And so on. All right, shall we do away with that, Natalie? Don't I have a thank you? Yes, I do.
We want to thank you as well.
Diane, hello. Thank you so much. We would have 9 minutes. John, yes, please. so inspiring.
I'll put it for-
Yes, please do.
After the time, that I participated in seminar. Made me think, can Ekphrasis exist without an adjective? Because for me, an adjective is dangerous. An adjective is subjective, it's personal. To say something is big for you doesn't necessarily mean it's big for me. To say something is green for you doesn't necessarily mean it's green for me. While looking at the thing, there are certain adjectives that are historical, Baroque. But Baroque is also subjective to the culture that encapsulates it. So isn't it just dangerous? and
Okay,
Subjective and
what do you mean by adjectives? I mean, do you also mean when I say stenographic Ekphrasis? Are you talking about the way I talk about it or what's in the slides, you know?
stenographic is more just.
Yeah, I just want to say
Yeah.
short.
Well, I mean, just say something is lively,
Yeah.
an adverb, but still, the sense of, I mean, sure, maybe it is for the person saying that. But for someone who's only getting that image through that person's language, perhaps it isn't really lively, it's just that person's a bit boring and that happens really loudly. And now the person who has been exposed to that has to think, oh, it was something, and they're imagining something like some orgiastic environment. And I think that's the danger. I'm just trying to like get it on the go.
Yeah.
That's the danger of the phrase is that it says, I'm the one in power to tell you what this looks like. You need to try it. Why should I trust you?
Exactly. No reason why you should trust me ever, John. But no, I know. But isn't that the nice thing about Ekphrasis? That it's bringing these questions into circulation. And the more descriptions you have of one thing, yeah, say, you know, you have a description, but you also have the photograph in the novel that's being described, and you have several people in a gallery describing the same thing. So you have many things in the end, because
about the same object.
not yet, but I think, John, you should think about getting into that. No, I don't think maybe Lilian or you know, or Natalie can think of, you know, how, yeah, I mean, vision is subjective. Yeah, we know that. So different outcomes. And, you know, a picture with 1,000 words, you cannot describe the pictures. And if we describe the same picture and don't, you know, different versions will come out. So I take your point, but I think that's exactly the exciting thing about it. That what I see as lively, you think it's completely boring. And I mean, why is that? And what does it say? Yeah. So I think Ekphrasis does a good job.
I don't understand. They provide movement, they provide color.
Color.
They evoke sound.
Anyway, call them the unbearable people mind or something.
You could have used that. That's true.
Yeah.
Can you think of an Ekphrasis without adjective?
Interesting.
That would be difficult. I mean, you know, I think what I find interesting are verbal experiments where writers only use nouns to, you know, do away with language and kind of access the visual. You know what I mean? No movement, no succession, but just a static thing. So that maybe if we looked at such lists, maybe there would be Ekphrasis without adjectives. But we always, of course, you know, Ekphrasis, you know, if there's no picture, we are supposed to imagine the image. And yeah, we need Ekphrasis. We need, for instance, terms like yeah, the traffic light green. So we can all imagine a similar kind of green, unless you have a problem with your vision, right? So adjectives like, yeah, or cherry red. No, that's not a good example.
But even like
Yes?
years and years ago, how even language, not just language, but cultures have different colors.
Yeah, like the Eskimos, 100 adjectives for
Exactly.
snow white, white snow, I mean.
How can we communicate something even through something color? Not just because we do see colors different, apparently that's
Yeah.
proven, but our own language captures that color differently than others.
Yeah, but that's what Ekphrasis does, right? Showing that vision is culturally produced or depends on a context, on a cultural context, and all the political issues that come with that. Yeah, I think you're on a good track, John. I think it does the right thing with you.
You said it was polemic, you didn't say it was right, that's all. Just looking, for enough 10 minutes of conversation.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. Thank you very much. We do have 2 minutes left, but I think people are fed up with Ekphrasis. Yeah.
So, yeah, very naive. Yeah.
But if you refer to different images, why would you call that, if it's a word image thing, why would you call it intertextual?
Do you know?
Intermedial, I would call it intermedial, just to underline that media have different characteristics, right?
Mhm.
Just to bring this, yeah.
But it's still text, so.
Well, but not, yeah, here with the Orden, you mean? Yeah, good point. But usually, Ekphrasis refers to images.
Yes.
But with the stenographic,
Yes.
yeah, it's in the text. So
Yes.
it's intertextual, but it's more than that, because it also refers to Bruegel paintings.
Yes.
So in a way, it's intertextual, but on top of that, there's also this intermedial word image layer. Yeah.
I was wondering, has Cole ever been questioned, or has he ever commented on his writing techniques and style and borrowings, from the internet?
Well, I was honored to interview him in Cologne on one of these world literature things they have in summer. And I asked him, and he said, "Oh, what do you mean?" So I don't know. I mean, this is a cosmopolitan New Yorker, and so clever, you wouldn't squeeze it out of him. I mean, he's mit allen Wassern gewaschen.
You know what it is. He got scared.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether he knows the word, but he also told me he will never, ever, on the podium, he said he will never, ever write another novel. So after Open City, he did Blind Spot. This is just a book that it's just photographs, color photographs with very short vignettes. It has like an emblem structure, yeah, a title, a picture, and a little text. And after that, while he told me he will not write another novel, what's come out in 23? Tremor. Well, it's not exactly a novel in kind of, a strict sense of the definition, because it's so playful with genre. But yeah, another narrative text. Very naughty he is. Oh, well.
For this day.
Thank you so much. I mean, your questions are so inspiring and yeah, make me think and refine and maybe people have new ideas what to do in the future.
We work. Gabby, thank you so much again. We are so very grateful for your time, your knowledge, expertise, all the work you've put into those lectures and seminars, and your conviviality as well, and your taking care of us as well, and our different research fields and specialties. You are very special, and I'm so grateful. And so please join me in thanking Gabby again for everything.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, I've been reciprocal. Yes, I learned a lot. Thank you very much. And thanks again so very much for this wonderful invitation.
We'll keep working together, and I have to say a big thank you as well to all the people who joined us online tonight and in the previous sessions as well. So sorry you can't be here with us to celebrate Gabby's last day, but thank you so much, and we'll be in touch and we'll see you again.
Okay. Bye bye, guys. Thank you. Thank you. Bye. Bye bye.